Hi everyone, and welcome to The Sleepy Scientist. I'm really happy you're here. Tonight, we're going to go on a calm and quiet trip to learn something amazing. So get comfy, take a deep breath, and let's enjoy this peaceful science story together. Before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it for you right now? If you like relaxing science videos, don't forget to tap the like button. Now let's begin. Long ago, before telescopes reached like silver reeds into the skies, before glass and mirrors turned the heavens into something that could be measured, the night was a tapestry of mystery. The stars shimmered above villages and mountains, uncounted, unnamed, moving across the velvet dome in patterns that seemed eternal. To most, the heavens were not something to question. They were the stage upon which gods moved, where fate was written in constellations, and where the cycles of planting and harvest obeyed a divine script. To suggest otherwise was not just strange, it was dangerous. And yet within that danger, within the stillness of candlelight and parchment, a few daring souls whispered their suspicions that the world was not what it seemed. Imagine a man hunched over a small desk, the candle flickering in the drafty silence of his chamber. His quill scratches across parchment, the ink forming words that will never be spoken aloud in the crowded markets. He writes not of angels or omens, but of circles and spheres, of hidden motions that make the stars appear to wander. He notices that the sky does not truly circle the earth, but that perhaps Earth itself moves, like a wanderer drifting among the stars. His heart pounds because such an idea is not only bold, it is forbidden. If he shares it, he may be called mad. He may be branded a fool, but inside he knows something is stirring, something that could change forever how humanity sees its place in the cosmos. For centuries, people trusted what their eyes told them. The sun seemed to rise, the moon seemed to follow, and the stars wheeled as though Earth was a still stage. The philosophers of old had taught that the heavens were perfect spheres, crystalline shells turning with divine precision. It was beautiful, orderly, and comforting. To say the Earth moved, to say the sun did not circle us, was to tear at the very fabric of certainty. And so, when Copernicus began to suggest otherwise, when he dared to put the sun at the centre, the whispers of doubt became laughter. A man who thought the ground beneath him was not solid, who claimed we were hurtling through space, surely such a man had lost his mind. Yet the laughter was edged with fear, for if the earth moved, what else could be questioned? If we were not the centre, then perhaps our place in the divine plan was not so certain. To mock the thinker was to keep the old comfort alive, and so genius was disguised as folly, not because the ideas were small, but because they were too large, too vast for the heart to hold without trembling. Now imagine Galileo, sitting on a quiet balcony with a tube of glass and wood held to his eye. Through it, the moon is no longer a perfect sphere, but a rugged landscape of mountains and valleys. The stars multiply beyond counting, scattered in endless depths. The planet Jupiter carries its own little moons, dancing around it like children around a parent. These visions are intoxicating. They confirm that the heavens are not fixed perfection, but worlds upon worlds, moving in grand, intricate patterns. Galileo's heart races with wonder, but when he speaks, when he shows others, many turn away. The churchmen scowl, the scholars murmur, and his discoveries are mocked. They call him deluded, a man tricked by lenses. Some even whisper that his device is a toy of the devil. To see too much is to invite ridicule, For knowledge, when it is too new, appears as madness to those who fear its light. Think of how lonely it must have been to hold a truth so heavy and yet be surrounded by disbelief, to see a vast sky teeming with worlds and to be told you are wrong, foolish, even dangerous. The laughter that met these pioneers was not playful. It was sharp, it was a shield against change. But the stars do not bend to laughter, and the truth does not dissolve beneath mockery. Slowly, gently, across the centuries, the world began to lean toward the vision of those mocked as fools. The earth did move, the sun did shine at the center, and space opened wide like a vast ocean. But in the beginning, the genius was clothed in the garments of folly, and the laughter echoed louder than the stars themselves. When you close your eyes and picture those nights, the hum of insects in the fields, the hush of distant bells, the heavens stretched above like a silent cathedral, you can almost feel the courage it took to speak against the chorus. To say, "No, it is not what it seems. The earth is a wanderer, the stars are suns, the heavens are endless." Such words fell like stones into still water rippling with unease, and yet every ripple carried us closer to truth. It is a strange thing how the human mind resists the vast. To know too much too soon can feel like drowning, and so the thinkers who saw beyond their time were mocked, not for being fools, but for daring to look too far. Their laughter was the world's way of shielding itself from awe. But awe, like starlight, finds its way through cracks, seeping into hearts, one by one, until the laughter fades into silence and wonder blooms again. That is how the mocked became the remembered, and how fools became the architects of the universe we now see with open eyes. Let us drift deeper into the story, into the quiet struggle of minds that reach too far, too soon. For what is ridicule but the armour of those not yet ready to see? The stars that twinkled above ancient courtyards and cloisters whispered their secrets endlessly, but only a few dared to truly listen. Those who did were often painted as dreamers, jesters of thought, men and women playing at ideas too wild for the serious world. Yet beneath the mask of laughter, a tremor always lingered, because sometimes what seemed foolish carried the echo of something greater. The pattern repeats across centuries. The Greek philosopher Aristarchus once murmured, long before Copernicus, that the sun might sit at the centre of all things, the earth circling around it like a child clinging to its parent. His peers smiled at the quaintness of it, then turned away. His words were left in the dust of forgotten scrolls, eclipsed by the louder voices of Ptolemy and Aristotle. To believe Aristarchus was to believe that all tradition might be wrong, and that was more frightening than the possibility of error. And so he was forgotten, a voice softened by time, until the wheel of history turned, and the laughter that buried him seemed less like wisdom and more like blindness. We can see this pattern even in the way people look at the sky tonight. The stars may no longer be mistaken for pinholes in a heavenly dome, but our first instinct is still to shrink the infinite into something small, something manageable. When telescopes showed that galaxies themselves stretched beyond measure, that we were not the centre of the universe or even the centre of our own galaxy, the same discomfort stirred again. To mock what is vast is to keep our feet on solid ground, to hold back the tide of wonder until we are ready. The fools who saw too far were simply those who walked without such armour. Consider how Galileo faced not just laughter, but interrogation. His discoveries were too vivid, his words too sharp. The moons of Jupiter circled before his very eyes, undeniable companions in the night sky. And yet to many they were illusions, phantoms conjured by glass. When he was asked to recant, to silence his truth, the mockery turned to power, and power pressed hard, and still he whispered, "Eppur si muove," and yet it moves. In that single phrase, half defiant, half resigned, he revealed the paradox of genius mocked as folly, that the truth does not bend to laughter, nor to chains. It remains glowing quietly, waiting for time to ripen. But ridicule is not only in the halls of power, it echoes in the everyday spaces too. Imagine a young student centuries ago daring to repeat these forbidden thoughts. His peers snicker, the teacher frowns, and the words are swallowed. To be called a fool is to be banished from the comfort of belonging, and so many remain silent. The genius is not only mocked by others, but sometimes mocked by his own doubts, by the loneliness of carrying a vision no one else will share. What cruelty it must be to feel your thoughts glow like lanterns in the mind, and yet see them extinguished in the eyes of others. And yet there is beauty in this trial, for laughter is often the first sign that something new has entered the world. The fool's crown is the seed of the sage's laurel. When people laughed at those who claimed the earth moved, they were unknowingly acknowledging the trembling of their own certainty. The very absurdity of the claim forced them to notice it. Mockery in this way is the shadow of change. The light it resists will eventually sail across the world, even if it takes centuries. Every sneer, every jest is a marker of the moment before awakening. Now let us wander beyond astronomy, for the stars are not the only stage where this story plays. Think of medicine, where once the body was thought to be ruled by humours, invisible fluids of hot and cold, wet and dry. When some dared to say that disease came not from imbalance but from tiny unseen creatures, the laughter rang out again. To believe in invisible worlds within a drop of water seemed foolish, fantastical, and yet the microscope revealed truths more dazzling than any myth. The mocked vision became the foundation of healing, the laughter fading into silence as lives were saved. Genius had worn its costume of folly once more, only to be unmasked by time. The rhythm is the same across all branches of knowledge. Electricity, once thought a parlour trick, sparks dancing on amber rods, became the lifeblood of cities. Evolution, once dismissed as a scandal, became the lens through which we understand all of life. The ridicule of the new is a veil, fragile but persistent, draped over discoveries until courage pulls it aside, and each time the fool's laughter becomes tomorrow's wisdom. Pause and breathe with this thought. Every star above us tonight was once a mystery, every law of nature once a whisper ignored. Those who first heard them did not wear crowns of honour. They carried the weight of mockery, the sting of being dismissed. But they listened anyway, they looked anyway, and slowly the world turned toward them, realizing that what had been ridiculed as folly was, in truth, the dawn of understanding. It is a cycle as old as thought itself, and within it lies a quiet lesson, that laughter, though it wounds, is often the herald of wonder yet to come. Now let us bring this story toward its gentle close, not with the thunder of triumph, but with the soft unfolding of time, like petals opening under morning light. For the laughter that once rang sharp against new ideas always fades, dissolving into the silence of acceptance. What once seemed absurd becomes ordinary. What once drew scorn becomes the fabric of daily thought. The earth moves around the sun, and no one trembles to say it. The stars are sons of their own, and no one scoffs at the claim. The fools of yesterday now walk in memory as prophets of curiosity, and the laughter that followed them has turned into quiet reverence. Think of how Copernicus, who feared to release his book until the end of his life, now rests as a cornerstone of science. His timid whisper that the sun might be the centre has become the lullaby of schoolrooms, the truth children learn before they even know how to spell his name. Imagine Galileo, who once stood in shadow, mocked and silenced, now with craters on the moon named after him, with spacecraft carrying his name into the void. The man who was laughed at for seeing too far has become the one who helps us see farther still. The genius and the fool have traded places in history's theatre, the masks exchanged as time tilted its stage. And yet, the story is not only about them, it is about us, about the rhythm of human thought. For even now, in laboratories and notebooks, there are ideas being laughed at, visions being dismissed as fantasies. Somewhere a thinker proposes that life may not be limited to what we define, that consciousness may not be bound to brains alone, that time itself may flow differently than we imagine. And again, the laughter rises, just as it always has. But the stars remind us, with their patient glow, that today's mockery may be tomorrow's map, that the fool of this hour may be the teacher of the next. There is a sweetness in this cycle, even in its cruelty. For laughter, though sharp, is not the end. It is the middle, the pause before understanding. To be mocked is to be noticed, to stir the air around stagnant certainty. The laughter of the crowd, though it isolates, also marks the threshold of change. Without it, genius might remain hidden, untested, unseen. To be called a fool is often the first sign that you have stepped beyond the known, into the tender darkness where truth waits. Close your eyes for a moment and picture the night sky again. Imagine the first person who thought that perhaps those tiny points of light were not lanterns or holes in a dome, but faraway suns. Imagine the ridicule, the disbelief, the weary smile of neighbours who shook their heads at such nonsense. Now, think of what we know, that those suns have planets, that those planets may have oceans, winds, perhaps even eyes looking back at us. The fool was not a fool at all, but the first to open a door no one else could see. The laughter was merely the echo of fear, fading as wonder took its place. So the story drifts to its close with a soft lesson, one that hums like the low chord of a cello. To be mocked is not always to be wrong. Sometimes it is the surest sign that you are standing on the edge of a vast truth. The laughter of the world is the veil that hides new dawns, and those who dare to look past it light the path for everyone who follows. The stars they laughed at still shine, steady and endless, whispering that genius and folly are not enemies, but masks that history exchanges in its own quiet rhythm. When the last echo of laughter fades, only the stars remain. They wait, patient as ever, for the next fool to gaze upward, to see what others cannot yet see, to speak what others cannot yet believe. And in that moment the cycle begins again. Mockery, wonder, truth, woven together like the endless turning of the earth, forever moving though it feels so still beneath our feet. There are worlds within worlds, so small that the naked eye cannot glimpse them, yet so vast in their influence that they shape the very fabric of life. For most of human history, these hidden realms were dismissed as fantasy, the musings of overactive imaginations. To speak of invisible creatures, too tiny to see yet powerful enough to bring sickness or health, was once to invite ridicule. It sounded absurd, like whispering that ghosts moved in the air or that shadows carried intent. And so, those who dared to suggest the existence of these unseen companions were mocked, their visions brushed aside as foolish tales. But the invisible was patient, waiting for the moment when glass and light would reveal what had been there all along. Imagine the early physicians, clad in robes and certainty, declaring that illness came from an imbalance of humours, that the body was a vessel stirred by heat and cold, wet and dry. They believed the air itself might turn poisonous, that mists and vapours carried curses. To suggest instead that countless invisible beings swam in water, clung to hands, floated on breath, was to break the comfort of tradition. What eye could prove it? What hand could capture such tiny tricksters? The idea felt like madness, and those who whispered it were laughed at. Yet even as laughter filled the halls, the invisible continued its quiet work, unseen armies shaping the destiny of kings and peasants alike. Consider the lonely figure of Antonia van Leeuwenhoek, a tradesman with a passion for polishing glass. By chance, by obsession, he built lenses of such clarity that they'd reveal the hidden kingdom of life. Through his tiny microscopes, he saw water teeming with creatures, so small they seemed like sparks of another universe. He called them animalcules, little animals, swimming in a world no one else believed existed. He wrote letters describing his discovery, only to be met with disbelief. Learned men scoffed at the idea of invisible life, accusing him of fantasy, of embellishment. A cloth merchant peering into a drop of pond water was not to be trusted with rewriting nature. Yet in time his visions proved true, and the laughter that once silenced him became the silence of awe. How strange it must have been to see what no one else could see. To peer into a droplet and discover it alive, swirling with unseen dancers, while the world outside dismissed your words as folly. To walk the streets knowing that every surface, every breath, every sip of water held invisible worlds, and yet to remain an object of jest. Genius so often wears this disguise, the mask of foolishness, until the world catches up. And in the meantime the seer bears the weight of laughter, the solitude of knowing what others cannot yet imagine. The story of germs and microbes is not only a tale of discovery but of resistance. For centuries surgeons laughed at the idea of washing their hands. Midwives and doctors mocked the notion that cleanliness could save lives. When Ignaz Semmelweis noticed that women in his hospital died less when doctors washed their hands with antiseptic, his colleagues ridiculed him. They clung to their old beliefs, their pride shielding them from change. To them, he was a fool, obsessed with basins of water and carbolic acid. But he was right. The invisible was real, and it claimed lives with every unwashed hand. The laughter of his peers was heavy, and it broke him, but his truth endured, reshaping the very way we live and heal. Now, when you rinse your hands under clear water, when soap lathers and slips across your palms, you are part of that story. The invisible no longer hides in scorn but in understanding. The same world that once mocked the very thought of unseen beings now studies them in laboratories, sends them spinning through electron microscopes, maps their genes with precision. The fools of yesterday have become the fathers and mothers of microbiology, their laughter echoing only as a memory. And yet the lesson lingers like a soft refrain, that to speak of what cannot be seen is to risk being laughed at until the veil of invisibility is lifted. Pause and listen. The air around you, the water within you, the very skin you live in is alive with companions, countless in number, invisible yet essential, once mocked, once dismissed, now accepted as fact. The hidden worlds no one believed have become the foundation of life's great tapestry, threads woven so fine that they bind us to every breath, every sip, every touch. The laughter that once silenced visionaries has long since faded, replaced by the quiet hum of awe. And in that hum, the invisible continues its endless dance, reminding us that genius often hides in places the eye cannot reach. Let us wander further into the invisible, into the way laughter once tried to silence what could not be silenced. The history of hidden worlds is filled with these echoes, of truths dismissed not because they lacked power, but because they lacked visibility. To see is to believe, the old saying goes. But what of the things too small for sight? What of the realities that wait beyond the limits of the eye? Those who dared to answer were mocked, and yet the invisible did not vanish. It waited, patient as stone, until the day would come when the glass and the lens and the mind were ready. Think of Louis Pasteur, the man who bent over flasks of broth, watching how they clouded and grew foul with life when left open to the air. He suspected that invisible organisms floated freely, settling in, multiplying, transforming clear liquid into decay. His experiments were gentle but revolutionary. When he boiled the broth and kept it sealed, it remained pure. When he allowed air and dust to touch it, life blossomed in tiny, unseen colonies. To him, the conclusion was clear. Life came not from nothing, but from hidden travellers in the air. And yet the ridicule came quickly. To imagine that the air was thick with invisible creatures was madness to many. Learned men declared his work fanciful, his claims absurd. But little by little, his patient experiments dissolved the laughter. Pasteur's invisible world grew visible through reason, and the very air we breathe was revealed as a sea of life. The same laughter met Robert Koch when he traced specific diseases to specific microbes. To claim that tiny beings caused tuberculosis, cholera, or anthrax was to challenge centuries of belief. People shook their heads, finding it easier to blame curses or misfortune than invisible enemies. But Koch's careful methods, his stained slides and steady hands, revealed patterns too precise to ignore. The laughter faltered, then died, replaced by respect. The invisible had stepped out from behind its curtain, and medicine itself was transformed. The fool had become the founder, the jester, the sage. Yet ridicule persisted in new ways. When Joseph Lister spoke of antiseptic surgery, of cleaning instruments and wounds to prevent infection, his peers smirked at his fussiness. To them, the idea that invisible beings could haunt a scalpel or linger on a surgeon's hands was laughable. But his results spoke louder than laughter. Patients lived, wounds healed, and slowly, grudgingly, the mockery gave way to imitation. Today, his name whispers through every hospital, every bottle of antiseptic, though in his own time he bore the weight of scorn. The laughter that chased him now feels distant, like an echo in an empty hall. It is worth pausing to reflect on this rhythm, that the invisible often requires courage to name. Those who first glimpse it carry both the wonder of discovery and the burden of disbelief. To be told that what you see, what you measure, what you feel so deeply is nonsense, this is a wound as sharp as any. And yet through that wound, truth flows. Because the invisible does not bend to mockery. It remains steady and sure, waiting for the moment when the world finally turns its gaze. The hidden worlds extend beyond microbes, beyond germs. Consider the realm of atoms, once mocked as an abstraction, a philosopher's toy. Democritus, in ancient Greece, suggested that all matter was made of tiny, indivisible particles. His peers smiled at the absurdity of imagining grains too small to ever be seen. For centuries, atoms were dismissed as fanciful, a tale with no proof. Yet now we peer into the atom's heart, splitting it open, releasing energies that light cities and, at times, destroy them. The laughter that once silenced atomists now seems faint and brittle, like the crack of old parchment. What was once invisible and foolish is now the foundation of chemistry, of physics, of the very devices that illuminate the screen you read upon. And deeper still, the laughter greets new frontiers. Quantum worlds, where particles dance as both waves and points, where certainty dissolves into probability. These ideas too were once met with disbelief. To imagine that the fabric of reality itself flickers with uncertainty, that particles exist in many states at once, sounded like poetry more than science. Even today, the invisible quantum realm feels strange, unsettling, foolish to some, but the foolishness carries with it a quiet glow, a promise that tomorrow's truth may be hidden in today's jest. The laughter of disbelief is always the shadow cast by the flame of discovery. Now, breathe and imagine. The air in your room, the water in your glass, the warmth in your skin, each is alive with invisible patterns. Microbes weave unseen communities. Atoms hum with ceaseless motion. Quantum particles shimmer between possibilities. You cannot see them, but they shape every heartbeat, every thought, every breath. Once mocked, once dismissed, now undeniable, the hidden worlds no one believed have become the foundation upon which we walk. And still, new invisible realms await, cloaked in laughter, until the moment we are ready to believe. Let us now bring this story of the invisible to its gentle conclusion, letting the laughter fade and the quiet truth remain. For every age has its veils, and every generation has its fools, those who see what others are not yet ready to believe. The worlds once hidden in water droplets and dust motes are no longer mysteries to us. We wash our hands, we sip clean water, we breathe air, knowing it carries not curses, but companions too small to see. What was once a source of mockery has become the ordinary language of science, and the invisible is no longer invisible at all. Yet the story does not end here, because even now, in this very moment, new invisibles are waiting, their presence felt only faintly, like whispers just beyond hearing. Think of the world of genes, strands of information woven so delicately that they dictate the shape of every living thing. When Gregor Mendel knelt in his monastery garden, counting peas and noticing patterns, few took him seriously. His papers filled with numbers and ratios were ignored, laughed at, forgotten. A monk tinkering with plants was not to be seen as a prophet of biology, and yet he had glimpsed the invisible code of heredity, the logic that determines whether a flower blooms purple or white, whether an eye is blue or brown. Only decades later did the world awaken to his truth, and suddenly his foolish peas became the foundation of genetics. The laughter that once buried his work has long since disappeared, replaced by laboratories sequencing entire genomes, unraveling the invisible script of life. The same laughter greeted the early whispers of viruses smaller than microbes, slipping unseen through filters, moving like shadows through the body. To believe in beings too small for even microscopes seemed absurd. Yet today we know their power well, their invisibility made visible by new instruments, their presence shaping global histories. What was once ridiculed as fantasy is now studied with urgency, and the fools who dared to suggest it are remembered as visionaries. The invisible has a way of outlasting every jest. Perhaps this is the quiet lesson that threads through the story, that invisibility is never truly absence. What cannot be seen is often simply what we have not yet learned how to see. The laughter of disbelief is only a measure of how tightly we cling to the visible. But the universe is larger, subtler, more intricate than sight alone can capture. To open oneself to the invisible is to open oneself to wonder, to the possibility that reality is always more than it appears. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine drifting through these hidden worlds. Picture yourself inside a drop of pond water, surrounded by swirls of life too small for the unaided eye. Picture yourself inside a strand of DNA, a spiral staircase of code that shapes your very being. Picture yourself at the edge of the quantum world, where particles flicker in and out of certainty like candle flames in a draft. All of these were once ridiculed, dismissed, laughed away, and yet here they are, steady and true, shaping the rhythm of existence. The laughter is gone, but the truths remain, patient and enduring. And what of the invisible we do not yet know? Dark matter, silent and unseen, weaving galaxies together. Dark energy pulling at the fabric of space itself, consciousness. The mysterious glow of awareness that no instrument has yet captured. These too invite laughter, skepticism, dismissal, and yet perhaps one day the laughter will fade, and the invisible will once more step into the light. For the pattern is as constant as the turning of the earth. To see beyond the veil is to be mocked, until the veil is lifted for all. So the story closes with a quiet truth, like a candle burning low. The invisible has always been with us, shaping us, surrounding us, guiding us. Those who dared to name it bore the weight of ridicule, but they gave us the gift of sight beyond sight. The hidden worlds no one believed are now the worlds we live within, and still the universe holds more, waiting patiently for the next fool to peer into the unseen, to be laughed at, to be doubted, and finally to be remembered as the one who brought the invisible into view. There is a fragile border between curiosity and madness, a line so thin it often disappears in the eyes of the world. Those who wandered too far into the unknown, asking questions no one else dared to ask, were often branded as unstable, their genius mistaken for folly, their restlessness confused with delirium. To wander beyond the acceptable was to risk being cast out, mocked not only as a fool, but as a madman. And yet, history shows us again and again that what was once dismissed as madness was often the spark that lit the way forward. Picture the alchemists hunched over flickering flames, surrounded by glass vessels and strange powders. To the townspeople they looked like eccentrics, men playing with smoke and fumes, their chambers reeking of sulphur and secrets. They sought gold in lead, elixirs in herbs, transformations in the crucible of fire. Many laughed at them, called them dreamers, frauds, lunatics. Yet out of their obsessions grew the roots of chemistry, the careful art of transformation that would one day reveal the elements of life itself. The madness of their ideas, the ridicule they endured, became the soil from which modern science grew. Think of Nikola Tesla pacing alone in his laboratory, eyes alight with visions of invisible currents dancing through the air. He spoke of wireless power, of energy leaping across space like lightning, of machines that could tap the Earth itself for strength. Newspapers mocked him, calling his dreams impossible, his experiments the ravings of a disturbed mind. He lived alone, with pigeons for company, wandering the streets in clothes that grew shabby with time. To many, he was a madman, obsessed with sparks and wires. And yet, his visions laid the groundwork for the electricity that hums through our homes, the radio waves that carry our voices, the wireless signals that bind the world together. His madness was a lantern, though no one saw the glow until long after his solitude. Curiosity has always been dangerous when it steps beyond the comfortable. To ask why the earth trembles, why lightning splits the sky, why the heart beats, was once to invite suspicion. Strange questions stirred fear, and fear birthed mockery. The thinker was called unstable, reckless, unhinged. But within their solitude they touched truths too large to be contained. The laughter they endured was the shield of those who preferred silence, who trembled before questions that might unravel their certainties. Consider Charles Darwin, who returned from his voyage with notebooks full of strange observations. Finches with different beaks, turtles with different shells, creatures shaped by their environments in ways that suggested change over time. When he finally spoke of evolution, the reaction was swift. Some mocked him as a man trying to make humans into animals, as if such an idea were madness itself. Caricatures drew him with the body of an ape, his face twisted into a joke. His theory was painted as dangerous folly, an idea too wild to be accepted. And yet, time has folded his vision into the heart of biology. What was once derided as madness is now the gentle explanation of school teachers to children learning about life's endless forms. The story repeats in countless ways. To suggest that the heart was a pump rather than the seat of the soul was once considered absurd. To claim that the brain housed thought rather than spirit was to risk charges of madness. To dream that machines could fly was a fairy tale, a delirium, until wings of wood and canvas lifted from the ground. To imagine that voices could travel through wires was the rambling of eccentrics, until telephones carried whispers across continents. Each time the laughter rose, the accusations of insanity followed, and yet each time curiosity proved stronger than ridicule. How lonely it must have been to stand in that space between genius and madness, to feel your thoughts shimmer with possibility while the world saw only delirium, to be told that your curiosity was dangerous, your questions unhinged. Many broke under that weight, their brilliance dimmed by isolation. Others endured waiting for the world to catch up, and when it did, the laughter that once branded them as insane softened into admiration. Their madness became vision, their folly became foundation. Now, as you breathe in the quiet, think of the thin veil that still separates the known from the unknown. Somewhere someone is asking a question too strange, too bold, too unsettling. They may be mocked, dismissed, even pitied as delusional. But perhaps they are standing where Tesla once stood, where Darwin once trembled, where alchemists once dreamed. Perhaps their madness is the next lantern, waiting to be lit. And perhaps, one day, the laughter that follows them will fade, leaving only the glow of a truth too beautiful to be silenced. Let us sink deeper into this tender paradox, where curiosity becomes mistaken for madness, and wonder is dressed in the garments of delirium. The line is so fine that even those who walked it often doubted themselves, unsure whether they were explorers of truth or prisoners of illusion. To live with visions unseen by others is to live with loneliness, for the mind becomes a chamber echoing with questions that the world is not ready to ask. Those who carried these questions bore not only the weight of discovery, but also the burden of mockery, of whispers behind their backs, of laughter that branded them unfit for reason. Imagine Johannes Kepler sitting in dim candlelight, drawing ellipses where circles were once demanded. The heavens had always been thought perfect, their orbits round and divine. To suggest instead that planets traced ellipses, stretched and imperfect, was an affront to beauty itself. His peers shook their heads, some calling him obsessive, others whispering that he had strayed into madness. And yet his so-called imperfection was the truth, a truth that bound the cosmos with a new elegance. His madness became harmony, the geometry of the sky rewritten by the one who dared to look beyond the circle. Or picture Michael Faraday, the bookbinder's son with little schooling, who wandered into the invisible currents of electricity and magnetism. He spoke of lines of force weaving through space, of fields that could not be touched, but could be felt by matter. To many it sounded like fantasy, the rambling of a man too enchanted by sparks. Learned scholars with polished educations mocked him quietly, seeing him as an amateur dabbling beyond his station. Yet his madness laid the groundwork for physics as we know it. The invisible threads of force that today power every light, every machine, every signal carried through the air. Faraday's visions, laughed at as fanciful, became the language of modern science. Curiosity, when it bends too far from the familiar, often unsettles. When Sigmund Freud spoke of the unconscious mind, of hidden desires shaping thought and behaviour, his contemporaries scoffed. To peer into dreams and see meaning, there was madness to many, the ramblings of a man too obsessed with shadows. And yet the idea that unseen forces shape our choices has become woven into the way we think about ourselves. Whether accepted fully or not, his madness shifted the very language of psychology, leaving behind a trail of questions that still ripple through our culture. But the story is not only about great names carved into the halls of history, it is also about countless quiet souls whose ideas were dismissed as unstable, whose visions never found light. Some were too far ahead, their curiosities flowering before the world had fertile ground to hold them. Others were silenced by the ridicule, their insights buried with them. The laughter of their peers became the stone upon which their thoughts were crushed. And yet, even in silence, their questions lingered, waiting to rise again in other minds, in other times, until what was once madness became wisdom. It is worth noticing how often society fears the thinker who stands apart. To question the foundations of belief, to imagine differently, is to disturb the comfort of the many. Mockery becomes the easiest offence. To call the visionary mad is to preserve the world as it is, at least for a while. But the world is never still. Truth has a way of seeping through laughter, dripping slowly, persistently, until it reshapes the stone of certainty. The genius endures the mockery, not because they crave it, but because they cannot turn away from the questions that burn within. To ignore them would be the greater madness. Pause here and imagine yourself carrying an idea that no one else believes. Imagine the weight of solitude, the sting of being told you are delusional, the silence that follows your words. Now imagine holding on to that idea anyway, because it feels true in your bones, because the universe seems to whisper it when no one else listens. That is the courage of curiosity branded as madness. It is not a comfortable place to stand, but it is the threshold of every great discovery the world has ever known. So the laughter continues age after age as curiosity is mistaken for folly. But each time the laughter grows softer, the truth more insistent, and each time the fool of the present becomes the guide of the future. Madness dissolves into vision, folly into foundation, and the border between them shifts once more, like a shadow sliding across the earth at dusk. What remains constant is the courage it takes to ask, to wonder, to persist, even when the world calls you mad. Now let us bring this story to its resting place, the tale of curiosity mistaken for madness, and let it settle like evening light upon still waters. For the pattern has always been the same. Those who see differently are cast out, their visions ridiculed as folly, their questions dismissed as delusion. And yet, as the years pass, the same questions return, their answers slowly embraced until what was once madness becomes the very ground upon which the future walks. The laughter fades, but the ideas remain, patient as stone, waiting for the moment when the world is ready. Consider Vincent van Gogh, who painted the sky as if it were alive, swirls of fire and movement no one else could see. To his neighbours he was strange, unstable, broken. His canvases, now priceless, were once ignored or ridiculed. His art was seen as the work of a madman rather than a visionary. Yet today his visions of the world pulse with truth, showing us the hidden energy of life. What was dismissed as madness was simply sight tuned to a deeper rhythm, one too overwhelming for his own time. His story reminds us that genius is not only in laboratories and equations, but in colours, in brush strokes, in the restless urgency to show what lies beneath the visible. Or think of the Wright brothers, tinkering with wood and cloth in a bicycle shop, dreaming of wings. Neighbours laughed at their contraptions, called them dreamers, accused them of chasing madness itself. To imagine flight was to imagine breaking the laws of nature, but their fragile machine lifted from the ground and suddenly the madness was gone. The laughter fell silent in the wake of wings, and the world was forever changed. Once again, curiosity that had worn the mask of folly revealed itself as the truest kind of vision. Even today, whispers of this pattern continue. To speak of artificial intelligence shaping thought, to suggest that life may thrive on other planets, to imagine bending space and time, these are ideas some still mock as fantasy. The ravings of minds too enchanted by possibility. But perhaps they are simply the next lanterns, the next flickers of curiosity mistaken for madness. For history teaches us that ridicule is often the first cloak draped over truth, that laughter is the veil that hides tomorrow's certainties. There is a quiet strength in those who endure this laughter. They live on the edge of belonging, never fully embraced, yet unable to silence the questions that move through them. Their solitude is heavy, but their courage is heavier still. To be mocked as insane and yet to persist is to carry the torch of humanity's progress. It is to walk alone in the dark, guided only by the faint glow of an idea no one else will hold. And though the world may scorn them, the future will remember them differently. The fool becomes the guide, the madman becomes the teacher, the laughter becomes the silence of awe, So let this story close softly, like a candle being snuffed in a quiet room. Curiosity, no matter how strange, no matter how misunderstood, is the thread that pulls us forward. To call it madness is only to name our fear of the unknown, but the unknown is always waiting, always inviting, always whispering to those willing to listen. And when they do, when they dare to speak, they will be mocked, as they always have been. Yet, just as always, the laughter will fade, and their madness will be revealed for what it truly was, the gentle beginning of understanding. In the end, what the world calls madness is often the music of tomorrow, playing too soon for the ears of today. To mock it is natural, to fear it is human, but to endure it is genius. And so, the story of curiosity branded as insanity is not one of tragedy, but of quiet triumph, of laughter dissolving into wonder, of the mad becoming the makers of the world we now call home. There is a gentle paradox in the story of truth, for so often it lies hidden beneath shadows, waiting quietly while the world laughs at its first appearance. Light, when it is new, does not always dazzle, it unsettles. It asks us to see differently, and the eyes, unaccustomed, turn away. Thus many truths are born beneath ridicule, dismissed as nonsense, smothered in jest, until time softens the resistance and allows the light to emerge. This is the rhythm of discovery. The first spark mocked, the second spark doubted, the third spark finally embraced. What sleeps in shadow will one day awaken, though it may dream there for centuries. Think of Galileo again, not only as the watcher of stars, but as the man who turned his gaze toward falling bodies. To suggest that all objects fall at the same rate, regardless of their weight, was to challenge common sense itself. People laughed at the idea that a stone and a feather could share the same fate in the pull of gravity. Yet with careful thought and experiment, Galileo revealed that nature was not bound by appearances, but by deeper laws. His truth, once ridiculed, became a cornerstone of physics. The laughter faded, but the truth remained, glowing softly beneath the shadow until it was finally seen. Or consider the discovery of continental drift, the daring notion that the Earth's continents were not fixed but moved slowly across the surface of the globe. Alfred Wegener, who first proposed this vision, was mocked by his contemporaries. The idea seemed absurd, like watching mountains sail across an ocean. Learned geologists dismissed him, ridiculing his lack of proof, painting him as a dreamer lost in speculation. And yet, decades later, with the mapping of the ocean floor and the study of tectonic plates, his vision was vindicated. The laughter that once buried his theory now seems hollow, while his light shines as one of the most profound truths of Earth science. Beneath the shadow of ridicule, his idea slept, waiting for the right moment to awaken. The same story unfolds with the notion of antiseptic surgery, with the germ theory of disease, with the heliocentric cosmos, with evolution itself. Each was mocked, each was dismissed, each was shrouded in ridicule before becoming luminous with acceptance. It seems that ridicule is the first cloak truth must wear, the veil that hides its brilliance until eyes adjust to its glow. Perhaps this is why so many truths sleep in shadows, because the world is not ready for them to shine all at once. They wait patiently, like seeds in the soil, until the time comes when laughter fades into silence and silence into wonder. Pause here and imagine the patience of truth itself. Imagine it as a soft flame, hidden in the folds of time, content to glow unseen until the world is ready. Mockery cannot extinguish it. Shadows cannot smother it. It waits, quietly, gently, knowing that one day it will be seen. To those who hold it early, it feels like madness, like loneliness. But to truth itself, it is only a matter of time. The shadow is not an ending, but a beginning, a cradle in which the light learns to endure. And so, the story of truths that slept in ridicule is not one of defeat, but of quiet resilience. Every laugh, every jeer, every dismissal is a moment in the long awakening. What is mocked today may be the foundation of tomorrow. What is ridiculed in shadow may be the light that guides the future. To remember this is to hold patience in the face of disbelief. To trust that beneath the shadow the truth is only sleeping, never gone. Let us drift deeper into the story of light and shadow, for the pattern of ridicule and revelation runs like a quiet current through the history of thought. Every age has truths that sleep in darkness, truths that are mocked when they first stir. The laughter of the world is not always cruelty. Sometimes it is fear. Sometimes it is the clumsy defense of certainty against the trembling of change. But no matter the reason, laughter is the veil, and behind it the light waits. Think of Ignaz Semmelweis standing in his ward, watching mothers die after childbirth. He noticed that when doctors washed their hands in chlorinated water, the deaths diminished. To him, the conclusion was radiant. Invisible agents carried from one patient to another could be cleansed away. But his colleagues laughed, mocking him for his obsession with washing, treating him as a nuisance rather than a saviour. His truth slept beneath ridicule, too bright for his time. Only years later, with the rise of germ theory, did the light awaken fully, and the world finally understood. The laughter had been the shadow cast by fear of admitting fault, by the discomfort of changing habits. Semmelweis died broken, but his truth endured. Or picture Alfred Wegener again, imagining continents drifting like rafts across a restless sea of rock. He gathered fossils, climates, and coastlines, weaving them into a story of movement. His peers dismissed him, calling his theory unworthy of serious science. He died before the evidence of plate tectonics emerged, but his idea slept like a hidden lantern, flickering beneath shadow until geologists opened their eyes. Now, no map of Earth can be drawn without his vision. The laughter is gone, but his truth glows brightly across every globe. This rhythm is not confined to the sciences alone. In the world of art, literature, and music, ridicule often greets what is new. Claude Monet's paintings were mocked for their unfinished quality, critics sneering at their blurred light and colour. They called them impressions, as though the word were an insult. Yet Impressionism became one of the most celebrated movements in art, its light reshaping the way the world saw itself. The ridicule was only the shadow, and the truth of beauty slept until the eyes of the world could awaken to it. It is the same in literature. Mary Shelley's Frankenstein was dismissed as grotesque fantasy, the product of a fevered mind. But beneath the laughter and scorn slept questions that still haunt us. What does it mean to create life? And what responsibility do we bear for our creations? What was once treated as sensational folly has become a light that guides ethical debates about science, technology, and humanity. The shadow of ridicule was the cradle in which the story rested until time could awaken its deeper truths. Why is this pattern so constant? Perhaps because the new is always unsettling. To accept a new truth is to rearrange the furniture of the mind, to rebuild what felt safe and certain. Laughter becomes the instinctive shield, a way to keep the unfamiliar at bay, but laughter cannot erase what is real. Slowly, softly, the truth endures, slipping through the cracks, waiting for the world to grow ready. In time, what was mocked becomes mundane, what was ridiculed becomes revered. The shadow fades and the light shines steady. Now imagine standing in that shadow, holding a truth the world refuses to see. You feel the sting of mockery, the isolation of disbelief. Yet you know, deep within, that what you hold is not folly but flame. To endure in that space requires patience rather than the quiet courage to wait. For truth has always been patient. It knows that ridicule is temporary, that light always rises, that no shadow lasts forever. The truths that sleep in ridicule do not die. They dream, and when the world awakens, they rise brighter than before. Now we bring this story of light and shadow toward its quiet close, letting the laughter that once echoed grow faint, letting the truths that slept in ridicule awaken fully. For every truth that has lived in darkness carries with it the memory of being dismissed, the memory of being soaked. Yet when it finally rises, it shines with a gentleness born of patience. What was once scorned as folly becomes woven into the fabric of daily life, so natural that the laughter it once endured feels strange, almost unbelievable. We forget how fiercely it was resisted, how deeply it was mocked, because the truth, once accepted, feels as though it has always been here. Think of the theory of evolution. Ridiculed in its infancy, its author caricatured and jeered at in public halls. Today, it is the foundation of biology, shaping medicine, ecology, and our understanding of life itself. The shadow that once tried to bury it has vanished, leaving only the light of its insights. Or think of the idea that the earth circles the sun, once branded heresy, now taught to children before they can even write their names. The ridicule that sought to silence it has become a faint echo, barely remembered, while the truth it carried has become part of the rhythm of thought. This is how ridicule dissolves, like mist before dawn. The same is true of ideas closer to our own time. Climate science, once brushed aside as alarmist fantasy, now speaks with a clarity too urgent to ignore. The laughter of those who once denied it has grown quiet, while the truths of warming oceans, melting ice, and shifting skies glow like embers in the collective awareness. Or think of black holes, once dismissed as mathematical curiosities, laughed at as absurd impossibilities. Today they are photographed, their shadows captured against the glow of galaxies, their existence undeniable. Light has emerged from shadow, patient and steady, carrying with it the memory of ridicule, but no longer bound by it. The pattern stretches far and wide, beyond science into every realm of human imagination. Artists, musicians, dreamers of every kind have carried visions that seem too strange, too unsettling, too far from the familiar. Their work was mocked, their names dismissed, their gifts doubted. Yet with time, their visions shaped the way we see, hear, and feel. The laughter of their age was only the shadow through which their truth had to pass. And now, long after their voices have stilled, their light shines, untroubled, steady as stars. Perhaps this is the deepest lesson. that ridicule is not the end of truth but the beginning. To be mocked is not to be destroyed. It is only to be hidden for a time, to rest in the shadow, until the world can awaken to the light. Every truth carries with it a patience greater than the fear that resists it. Shadows cannot hold forever. Light always finds its way through. So let us close gently as one might close a book after a long night's reading, with the understanding that what is ridiculed today may be revered tomorrow. The truths that sleep in shadow are never gone, they are only waiting. And when the laughter fades, when the jeers dissolve into silence, the light will rise, soft and steady, reminding us that ridicule is only a passing cloud across the sky of discovery. Beyond it, the stars still shine, truths still wait, and light, always patient, waits to be seen. There is a tenderness in the story of vision, of those who looked beyond the horizon and were called fools for it. To see what is not yet visible, to imagine what does not yet exist, is to walk in solitude. The present clings to its familiar shapes, its safe certainties, while the visionary drifts into futures no one else can yet glimpse. And so, laughter follows them, sharp and dismissive, the laughter of those who cannot believe in what they cannot yet see. But tomorrow always arrives, and when it does, the echoes of those mocked as fools resound like gentle bells, reminding us that foresight is often mistaken for folly. Think of Leonardo da Vinci filling his notebooks with sketches of flying machines, submarines, and bridges that seemed fantastical to his time. To his contemporaries, these were the idle doodles of a restless artist, fanciful and impractical. They saw wings of wood and canvas, absurd contraptions with no chance of rising into the air. They laughed at the dream of a man trying to mimic birds. Yet centuries later, the world is filled with aircraft, submarines, and engineering marvels that trace their ancestry to his so-called foolishness. He saw beyond the horizon, and though mocked, his vision became the blueprint for futures he would never live to see. Or picture the Wright brothers, quiet bicycle makers in Ohio, tinkering with fragile frames and cloth wings. Neighbours chuckled at their persistence, their endless trials on windswept dunes. Newspapers mocked their claims, dismissing them as hoaxes. To believe in human flight was to believe in fairy tales. But in 1903 their machine lifted from the ground and the horizon shifted forever. What was once laughter became awe, and the fools became pioneers. The echoes of their vision carried across the world, filling skies with aircraft, carrying humanity farther than even they had dreamed. The same story unfolds with space travel. When early dreamers spoke of rockets reaching the moon, they were met with disbelief, their visions dismissed as childish fantasies. To walk on another world was too wild, too impossible. Yet in 1969, when footsteps pressed into lunar dust, the laughter of the past seemed distant and small. The fools who once spoke of rockets and planets had seen farther than their time allowed. Their echoes became reality, and the horizon stretched outward into the infinite. There is something deeply human in this pattern. We laugh, not because the vision is small, but because it is too vast. The horizon feels like a boundary, and to suggest there is more beyond it unsettles us. Laughter is our shield against awe, against fear, against the trembling that comes with the unknown. And yet the vision endures. It whispers across time, carried by those brave enough to hold it even when mocked. The fool is only a fool until tomorrow arrives. Pause and imagine yourself standing at the edge of an ocean centuries ago. listening to someone say that land lies beyond the horizon, that ships can cross into unseen worlds. To many it sounded like madness, the rambling of dreamers. The sea was thought to end in monsters, in cliffs, in endless falls. But those who trusted their visions sailed onward, and the horizon gave way to continents, to maps redrawn, to a world forever expanded. Their foolishness was only the world's fear of letting go. So the echoes of tomorrow are always with us, hidden in the laughter of today. The visions that seem absurd, the dreams too strange to believe, are often the seeds of what will one day feel ordinary. To see beyond the horizon is to invite ridicule, but it is also to invite the future. And though the world may laugh, time itself listens, carrying those echoes forward until they become the steady song of reality. Let us drift deeper into the echoes of tomorrow, into the stories of those who dared to speak of futures the world was not ready to hold. To imagine beyond the horizon is to carry both wonder and loneliness, for visions ahead of their time are rarely met with open arms. They are more often greeted with ridicule, with suspicion, with the easy laughter of dismissal. Yet time, as it always does, walks slowly toward those visions, and when it arrives, the laughter seems brittle, while the foresight glows steady and undeniable. Think of Jules Verne, writing of submarines gliding silently beneath the ocean, of rockets launching into space, of voyages to the moon. To his readers, these tales were fantasies, delightful nonsense meant only for entertainment. Yet within his words lay seeds of invention, sketches of technologies that would one day become real. Scientists and engineers who grew up reading his stories carried them into laboratories and workshops, turning dreams into machines. The author mocked as a spinner of impossible tales became a prophet of the modern world. His echoes carried forward, guiding the hands of those who built what others could not yet imagine. Consider too the visionaries who foresaw communication across invisible distances. To speak into a device and have your words carried across oceans seemed absurd. To send messages through the air without wires was laughable. When Guglielmo Marconi suggested such a thing, newspapers mocked him, skeptics called him foolish, and experts dismissed his work as a parlor trick. Yet soon, voices leapt across the Atlantic carried by radio waves and the laughter dissolved into silence. Today, invisible signals weave the world together, carrying words, images, and thoughts in streams of light and air. The fool who dreamed of wireless communication had only been listening to the echoes of tomorrow. And think of the dreamers who spoke of harnessing the atom. For centuries, atoms were invisible abstractions, the tiniest building blocks of matter. To suggest that within them lay energies vast enough to light cities or destroy worlds sounded like madness. Early theories were dismissed, and their authors treated as eccentrics lost in speculation. But when the atom was split, the hidden energies spilled forth, both terrible and luminous. The laughter that once dismissed the vision was replaced by awe and fear, for tomorrow had arrived and its echoes were louder than anyone had imagined. This rhythm continues in our own time. Artificial intelligence, once the subject of science fiction, was laughed at by many as the dream of enthusiasts who watched too many films. Machines that could think, that could learn, that could create. Surely such fantasies were no more real than stories of dragons. And yet, here we are, with machines that can translate languages, compose music, diagnose disease, and paint images with digital light. The laughter of yesterday has grown quiet, replaced by questions of responsibility and wonder. what was mocked as impossible has become part of the fabric of the present. The same is true of climate science, of renewable energy, of visions of space colonization and planetary exploration. There are still those who laugh, who dismiss solar sails and Martian colonies, who treat talk of interstellar voyages as the ravings of dreamers. But the pattern is ancient, and it whispers softly. Today's dreamers are tomorrow's guides. The echoes of tomorrow are already here, humming in the voices of those who dare to look past the horizon, daring to believe in what the rest of the world cannot yet see. So let us pause and feel the rhythm of this truth. Every great change begins in ridicule. Every vast vision begins in laughter. The fool of today is the builder of tomorrow, the dreamer who endures the sting of mockery because the future glows too brightly to be ignored. Their echoes ripple across time, soft at first, then louder, until the world can no longer pretend not to hear. And when that moment comes, the horizon opens, the laughter fades, and what was once folly becomes the foundation of a new age. Now let us bring this final story to its closing drift, letting the echoes of tomorrow settle into the quiet recognition that what was once laughed at always finds its time. To see beyond the horizon is to walk with shadows of doubt around you, to hear the sting of mockery at every step. Yet time has shown us again and again that the horizon is never the end. It is only the beginning of something greater, and those who are called fools for looking past it are often the ones who light the path for all who follow. Think of visionaries who imagined the digital world long before its birth. Alan Turing spoke of machines that could think, not as science fiction, but as quiet certainty. His ideas were treated with suspicion, his mind too strange, his vision too abstract. Some saw him as brilliant, others as dangerously eccentric. Yet the world now runs on the architecture of his thoughts, every computer an echo of his so-called foolishness. The laughter that once brushed him aside is gone, and his vision has become the heartbeat of the modern age. Or think of the dreamers who first spoke of mapping the human genome. To many it seemed absurd, a project too vast, too intricate, too impossible. Billions of letters hidden in the spiral staircase of DNA, read and recorded like the lines of a book. Such an idea was mocked as hubris, as folly. And yet, the genome was sequenced, the map drawn, and medicine itself transformed. The laughter of doubt dissolved into the silence of awe, and once again, the fool became the guide. And even now, new horizons shimmer ahead. The possibility of life on other planets, of journeys across interstellar distances, of bending time and space. These are the visions still met with laughter, still brushed aside as the fantasies of dreamers. But the rhythm of history whispers otherwise. Just as the flight of birds once seemed beyond us, just as the harnessing of lightning seemed absurd, so too these new horizons will one day awaken. The laughter that greets them now is only the shadow that precedes the light. There is a gentleness in this truth, a comfort in knowing that ridicule is not an ending but a passage. To be mocked for a vision is to stand in the same company as those who gave us the skies, the stars, the very tools we now use to speak across continents. The laughter of the present is the echo of fear, but the echoes of tomorrow are stronger still. They do not fade, they grow until the world finally learns to listen. So let us close softly with the image of a horizon stretching endlessly forward. Beyond it lies everything yet unseen, everything yet unimagined. And somewhere, a fool is standing there, speaking of what is to come, They are laughed at, dismissed, ridiculed. But in their words lie the seeds of tomorrow waiting to take root. The echoes will carry forward, and when the laughter is gone, the truth will remain steady as dawn. For every horizon hides another, and the fools who see beyond it are the ones who remind us that the future is always larger, always brighter, always waiting to be found. Now, as the long journey drifts toward its close, let us gather these stories like scattered lanterns and bring them together into one soft glow. We have walked with those who were mocked, those who were called fools, those who carried visions too large for their time. We have seen the laughter they endured, the ridicule that wrapped around them like shadows, and yet, through every story, one truth has remained steady, that what is dismissed today may become the foundation of tomorrow, that genius so often wears the mask of folly until the world is ready to see. From the stars that once circled a still earth, to the invisible worlds hidden in water, to the restless curiosity mistaken for madness, to the truths that slept beneath ridicule, to the echoes of futures glimpsed beyond the horizon, all carry the same thread. It is the thread of patience, of resilience, of the quiet endurance of those who could not silence their questions. They walked in loneliness, mocked by the many, but they carried the light that would one day belong to all. Their courage was not in being believed, but in holding fast to what they knew even when no one else would listen. There is comfort in this pattern, for it tells us that ridicule is not an ending. It is only the first veil that truth must pass through. The laughter of disbelief is the sound of the world protecting itself from what it cannot yet accept. But laughter fades, shadows dissolve. The truth, whether in stars, in microbes, in atoms, in dreams of wings or visions of machines, remains steady. It waits, patient as stone, until time itself bends to meet it. And when it does, the world forgets the ridicule and remembers only the revelation. Perhaps one day, the ideas we laugh at now will become the certainties of tomorrow. Perhaps the visions we dismiss as foolish will be the very things our children take for granted. In every age, the cycle repeats, a soft and endless rhythm. Ridicule, resistance, revelation. To be mocked is to be at the threshold of change. To be called a fool is often the surest sign of standing too close to the future. And so, what we call folly may only be wisdom that has arrived too early. Let us then hold these stories not only as memories of the past, but as whispers of what is still to come. For even now, somewhere, a quiet thinker is sketching an impossible idea. A restless dreamer is speaking of horizons no one else can see. Their words may be met with laughter, but their echoes will carry forward. And when the laughter is gone, the world will awaken once more, grateful for the fools who dared to dream. So we close gently, not with certainty but with wonder. The night stretches on, the stars still shine, and the horizon is never still. Genius and folly remain entwined, laughter and truth forever in dialogue. And in the soft distance tomorrow waits, patient and luminous, ready to turn today's mockery into the quiet dawn of understanding.